Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering from ELD's Time Ball Games in Bellingham, Mass. Here we have Luke on Elves versus Nick playing Death Shadow, a deck that hasn't been seeing much play since Oko came out. We'll see how this Delver list holds up. Heritage Druid turn number 1, and we're going to see a cycled Street Wraith in response. Snuff out. Feels like you don't force a will Heritage Druid if you can just snuff it out. And not opting to play a fetch land. I think he may have had one there. Gaia's Cradle into Birchlore Ranger. So in response to casting Birchlore Ranger, we're going to see a Snuff Out. And now Daze on Nettle Sentinel, along with the Brainstorm. And Death Shadow now showing up. Those life totals will need to be adjusted. I believe it's a 2-2 here with Nick at 11 life. So Death Shadow on board. Elvish Visionary. And that sees a Force of Will pitching force really going after Luke's board presence here. You see a land grant grabbing a overgrown tomb, and that may set up that it's like Imperious Prefect or Perfect or something like that. I believe it's a 3-mana elf that spits out Llanowar Elves like it's nobody's business. I'm going to see probably a fetch land popped in response. Push through some extra damage. So 6 coming in. That will not be lethal the next turn unless Nick adds to his board presence here. And he's going to post-combat Thoughtseize, which I don't love. I don't see any reason not to do that pre-combat. Would have got some extra damage in, turned it into a 2-turn clock. Sending now if another Death Shadow enters the battlefield, a few cards would actually be lethal here. Natural Order would be a problem. Natural Order would be very dangerous. Though we would need a couple of more bodies for it to actually be lethal on the spot, to be fair. The Crater Hoof would be able to be blocked by one of these Death Shadows. And Brainstorm. And lethal damage heading Luke's way. He can chump block these guys. Stay alive for one more turn. But that is not going to end up mattering. Elvish Visionary draws a card and he passes the turn back. We're on to game number 2. Luke has been playing around with this Elves list, learning Legacy, finding balance in between cards that he likes versus kind of how good those cards actually play against the metagame as a whole. Cards like the Imperious Perfect are going to take some time to evaluate. They'll need a lot of games. Over time, I suspect the elf list will start to converge more towards the traditional builds with Glimpse of Nature and Green Sun Zenith. Glimpse of Nature is going to be a very complicated card to tackle, but once he starts actually playing through that, I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. Drawing a card with every activation is really something. And I could even see running a build that has more of a proclivity to use Glimpse of Nature. Really max out on your Nettle Sentinels and Heritage Druids, extra Birchlore Rangers, and your 4 Green Sun Zeniths, and just really be happy to be in that situation where you're untapping multiple Nettle Sentinels and just comboing off, assembling those contraptions. Can be quite a bit of fun. Certainly the first few hundred times you do it. I suppose it does lose a little bit of the luster over time for some people, and some people just love it. Some people end up just being completely enamored with Elves lists and all of their incarnations. We've got a Heritage Druid, which does potentially mean Luke could have an explosive turn 2 here if he's got some 1-drop Elves to go along with it. Let's see what he's got. Got a Quirion Ranger. And that's going to prompt a Fatal Push on Heritage Druid. Oh, and I don't like that. So that forest could have been returned even with no useful untap, so to speak. You can just return a forest to untap your Quirion Ranger and a couple of creatures, including Wirewood Symbiote. So yes, I definitely think that's something I'll have to mention to Luke the next time he's in. He could have actually returned the forest to play it again and then cast the Wirewood Symbiote. So he's actually down quite a bit of mana here. Another Hymn to Torok is shredding his hand. Land Grant and Nettle Sentinel, and yeah, that's going to be the difference maker of this game. It's going to be very instructive for Luke to learn that lesson. Luke actually just turned 13, so happy birthday, Luke. I believe it was this past week he came in. And Brainstorm. Followed by a Ponder. So Luke does have a board presence of 3 1/1s that are going to be difficult to remove thanks to these force and the stability that Wirewood Symbiote brings to the table. Three damage comes in. Second main. He's going to tap. And now Gurmag Angler. So yeah, that's another example of how powerful Quirion Ranger can be. That would have allowed him to cast that Elvish Visionary. And the Elvish Visionary also could stand in the way of this Gurmag Angler. Now, we see Nick's hand, and it would have traded for a Force of Will in all likelihood. Probably would have necessitated a Force. Otherwise, he could be blocking with a Elvish Visionary, returning it to hand, casting it, drawing an extra card, while shutting down the Gurmag Angler. We've got a block and returning it to hand. That cannot be responded to. That is the payment. And that's Wirewood Symbiote certainly has a big target on his chest. He is really holding everything together at this point. and Plague Engineer. And that is probably gonna do it. Plague Engineer, an awful lot to ask to come back from. Now those Imperious Perfect actually could be useful. I believe it pumps the whole team, giving a +1/+1, counteracting the Plague Engineer. So Luke's build might actually be kind of uniquely well positioned versus Plague Engineer relative to other builds. Though I think the best answer to him is probably being super explosive and just killing them beforehand, maybe having some discard to stop him from hitting the table. And here we have Brazen Borrower hopping into the battle along with Death Shadow, Brainstorm, just looking to find some things that can lower the life total a little bit. We've got a Street Wraith cycling, and if that's a reanimate, maybe actually reanimate the Street Wraith depending on how low the life totals are. This may just be lethal as is. No, down to 5. And another Death Shadow. And that is going to do it. Shaman of the Pack, Disfigured, not able to be cast there due to the lack of mana, which also, depending on when that Wasteland hit, Quirion Ranger can actually return that to protect from Wasteland as well. So probably a super instructive game for Luke as he progresses on his journey to be a Elf Master. That is all for this one, but don't worry, there is a lot more. You can check out our older videos, and we're always putting out new videos from ELD's Time Vault Games in Bellingham, Massachusetts. If you want to help the channel, of course, you can like, subscribe, share, tap that notification bell so you can know the next time our new videos come out. Thanks for watching.